Hey, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. You know, one of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
For 25 years, Brightview Senior Living Associates have been committed to creating a vibrant culture and delivering exceptional services, making Brightview a great place to work and live. If you're looking for a rewarding opportunity to serve your local community and grow, we want you to join our team. Brightview Senior Living is growing and actively seeking vibrant associates to join our community teams, including directors, healthcare, activities, hospitality, and dining. Apply today at careers.brightviewseniorliving.com. Equal employment opportunities. Text BV Jobs to 97211 to apply.
Hi there, and welcome again to the Explaining History podcast. Now, it's been a long time since I've delved back into looking at Tsarist Russia, and I've been taken. Well, there's a book that I won in a competition nearly 20 years ago. It was a book that I won as a result of one of my students winning a parliamentary essay writing competition. And I, as a history teacher at the time, they got something nice out of it, no doubt. But I got a bunch of book vouchers to spend on obscure academic texts. One of them I bought was Reforming the Tsar's Army by Schimmelpenninck, van der Oy, and Menning. And it's an incredible book because it looks at the institutional, social, and political pressures on the Tsar's army in the 18th and 19th centuries. And it runs all the way up to 1905, or the years after 1905, after the disastrous defeat in the Russo-Japanese War. And there's a great essay by John W. Steinberg about how the Tsar and his generals tried to grapple with the fallout of the Russo-Japanese War, and ultimately how they failed really to learn its lessons. John Steinberg writes, in the aftermath of the rout by Japan in 1905, much of Russia united in opposition to the autocracy. While the nagging problem of social injustice exploded after Bloody Sunday, Nicholas II's short-sighted foreign policy, coupled with repeated defeats on the Asian battlefield and followed by international embarrassment, compromised his empire's and regime's integrity. The Tsar therefore faced the most serious crisis of his reign. This is true. Much like the situation confronting the empire after the Crimean War half a century earlier, the Far Eastern debacle shook the foundations of Russian power. The October Manifesto of 1905 appeared to indicate that Nicholas II had finally understood that the business of ruling Russia had become too cumbersome a task for himself as an autocrat to manage. Had the Tsar genuinely realised that the time had come for reform, that is, to follow in the footsteps of his grandfather Alexander II, and to seek to redefine the relationship between government and society? If so, then Nicholas II failed to grasp how Alexander II's great reforms, regardless of their success or failure, contributed to the modernisation of the empire. Alexander II had spent 6 years, 1855 to 61, building a political and social consensus by which he could continue to rule after the 1861 emancipation and the reforms that followed into the 1870s. Not known for firm leadership, Nicholas II attempted to reform Russia in the midst of a revolutionary crisis that came on the heels of a devastating military losses. Such circumstances hardly encouraged the mobilizing of public opinion to build a political consensus. The result was more political turmoil and social instability as Russia's military leaders sought to digest, understand, and learn from the recent fiasco. Despite the Tsar's ever-changing opinion on most issues, there was no question that the performance of the Imperial Army in the Far East demanded careful evaluation of the empire's military arm. Among a host of issues, the outcome of the Manchurian conflict created legitimate concerns about the capabilities of Russia's high commanders to perform their duties on a rapidly transforming battlefield. This in turn resulted in careful scrutiny of the general staff officers who composed the brain trust of each major unit of the army. Before the Japanese War, the place of the general staff officers in the military command structure had been the subject of an intense debate between War Minister A.N. Kuropatkin and one of Russia's most able generals, M.I. Dragomirov. Whereas Kuropatkin sought to integrate general staff officers into a unified command structure to empower them as they moved troops on and off the battlefield, Dragomirov, who had been educating and training Russian officers, including Kuropatkin, since the 1860s, still staunchly adhered to A.V. Suvorov's belief that the key to military success rested in the training and morale of Russian soldiers. All-powerful general staff officers, according to Dragomirov, would destroy the chemistry between the rank and file that was vital to victory in combat. Despite Dragomirov's death in October 1905 and Kuropatkin's disgrace as commander in Manchuria that year, the discussion remained very much alive in military circles well into the next decade. In this sense, the Russo-Japanese War was a major turning point for the institutional mentality of the Imperial Army. General Suvorov's famous dictum, bayonets before bullets, remained the motto of traditional servitors as they led their troops into war in the summer of 1914. By contrast, progressive thinkers within the High Command understood the implicit lessons of their recent defeat. Technology had transformed the battlefield, and this process had replaced bayonets before bullets with a new style of warfare. Indeed, the Empire's survival as a military power depended on how well the Army's brightest minds could formulate a doctrine that both standardized operational expectations and provided unified direction to the Army's massive training establishment. The challenge was to link the education of future staff officers to the development and implementation of a military doctrine. Okay, so I think one thing that's worth observing is that other powers, the French, the British, the Germans, they don't have a version of 1905. In the decade before the First World War. I mean, several of them come close to it, but nobody fights and, crucially, loses a major war. And Russia does. In the midst of the Napoleonic Wars, following the Battle of Jena, the Prussian army reforms itself radically along French lines and creates an imperial general staff that becomes the feared German general staff of the First and the Second World Wars. And military reform very often follows military crisis. The countries go away and have a good long think about what it is that has led them in order to these kind of catastrophes. And in the case of the German general staff, or the Prussian general staff, and which become the German general staff, the answers they draw are the right ones, and what the operational kind of system that they come up with is one which is known as Auftragstactic, or kind of operational autonomy for battlefield commanders, as long as they're adhering to big strategic goals. Like if the goal is to take Paris, how you do it based on the conditions on the ground is how you do it. Whereas the British general staff were far more prescriptive, and far more, in some ways, limiting in what the generals in the First World War could do. Now, what we're going to do now is look at how 1905 transforms Russia and transforms the Russian army. And we know that there are a number of potential options on the table, and one of the great considerations is what we do about technology. Russia has just been bested by a much smaller power, and a power that the Tsar thought was, this inferior Asian nation. Nicholas himself had sort of general kind of prejudices towards Japan, and was astounded when the Russian army was defeated by the Japanese.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here, wishing you a very happy half-off holiday, because right now Mint Mobile is offering you the gift of 50% off unlimited. To be clear, that's half the price, not half the service. And Mint is still premium unlimited wireless for a great price. So that means a half day, yeah? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
From Adams Morgan to Anacostia Park, we all want safer neighborhoods. But what does real safety mean? Real safety means preventing crime before it happens. By having police work with communities to disrupt cycles of violence. By supporting families with stable housing. And providing more mental health and drug treatment. We know that adding more police and locking up more people doesn't make us safer. Real safety means investing in the things that help prevent crime. Learn more at RealSafetyDC.
Even the influential Grand Duke Nikolai Nikolaevich the Younger recognized the Academy's significance to the future of the army. From his new and powerful position as chairman of the State Defense Council, he launched an inquiry to reassess the education provided to Russia's general staff officers. But the first Grand Duke reorganized the military high command by decentralizing the supreme authority of the war minister and appointing a powerful chief of the general staff who, according to German example, could report directly to the Tsar. Not surprisingly, the Grand Duke appointed to this position was his protege, General F.F. Palitzin, who subsequently formed a special commission to study the effectiveness of academy education. Instead of forming a diverse group of officers representing a cross-section of opinion, however, Palitzin appointed Cavalry General A.A. Bilderling and Infantry General Shebov Nefodovich, I.M. Povolotsky, and A.P. Skugorevsky, and P.A. Frolov, all very significant officers who possessed little understanding of the duties and responsibilities of modern staff officers. Here we have something that all armies in the run-up and during the First World War needed to reconcile: the gulf of difference between the experience essentially of career soldier aristocrats and the modern conditions that the field officer had to encounter, and the things that a colonel, a brigadier, or a general in the field needed to understand, the kinds of things that they were actually going to experience. It was about the education that the Russian soldier needed in order to deal with the pressures of modernized warfare. And again, Russia had this is the War of 1905 that we gets overlooked. It really is. It's seen as this kind of embarrassing thing that happens to Russia that shows that the Russian Empire is hopelessly weak, which is indeed true. But it also ignores the fact that Russia had an experience of modern warfare. There are machine guns and trenches, for example, that are employed, and artillery employed in very similar kind of fashion to the First World War. And this is the Russians got a taste of the war that they would get, 9 years later. And so the education of Russian soldiers and Russian staff officers here is really, really important. And the Russian, the Grand Duke misses a trick by failing to enforce um, a, a kind of a channel of learning, by failing to kind of move the gentlemen cavalry officers out of the way, and to create a panel, an educational panel, that would ensure that Russian junior officers and field officers and staff officers were able to, learn and adapt to the rigors of modern warfare. Of the group of officers, only Skugorevsky appeared to be interested in the intellectual side of general staff affairs. Composition of this group did not augur well for any path-breaking ideas to revamp general staff education. Although a bureaucratic entity had been created to gather data to help reform, the investigation would take years to produce results. Over this period, the sense of urgency to fix all problems was worn down by the daily grind of mundane administration. To help gather information for this commission to analyse, in March 1906, the Academy's commandant, General N.P. Mikhnevich, one of the Army's foremost progressives, circulated a survey to 314 officers who had graduated from the Academy between 1880 and 1903, and who had also served in the Russo-Japanese War. The questionnaire asked these questions. What shortcomings were revealed in the specialised training and practical skills of the officers in the recent war? What types of difficulties did general staff officers encounter in general, and specifically in the last war? How would you judge the standards of education at the Nicholas Academy of the General Staff? What should be done to change the academic standards of the Academy when taking into account the experience of the Russo-Japanese War?
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here, wishing you a very happy half-off holiday, because right now Mint Mobile is offering you the gift of 50% off unlimited. To be clear, that's half price, not half the service. And Mint is still premium unlimited wireless for a great price. So that means a half day, yeah? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
If your appliances can't handle the holiday hosting heat, December deal drops at Lowe's makes upgrading easy. Get up to 35% off select major appliances, and rewards members save an additional $40 on the Whirlpool electric range and the over-the-range microwave. Plus, get up to 60% off select ladders so you can deck all the halls. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 12/10. While supplies last. Selection varies by location. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. See Lowe's.com/terms for details.
Do we need to develop any new courses to better prepare general staff officers for their duties in peace and wartime. Many questions surrounded the creation of this survey. The commandant of the academy, Mikhnevich, was searching for ideas that might make staff education more relevant to officers who found themselves in operational situations. The request for suggestions about curriculum indicated that Mikhnevich hoped to offer bold new courses to address shortcomings in the academy's curriculum. But oddly, in an empire that hid its best ideas and biggest faults in a mountain of bureaucratic paper, the questionnaires seem to have been drafted informally. It all appeared to be the work of Mikhnevich himself, right down to the selection of the 314 officers queried. This is not to suggest that the commandant was conducting a clandestine operation, since the survey was circulated throughout the empire and the officers responded through normal channels. In fact, what was stunning about this set of questions was the openness, indeed the downright candour, that Mikhnevich encouraged from his respondents. But alas, typical of surveys given with any bureaucracy, by November 1906, only 88 officers had responded. Not wishing to lose the reforming impulse that temporarily existed, Mikhnevich decided that these replies would have to represent a consensus of the opinion of the general staff officers who served in the Russo-Japanese War. The respondents agreed that Russia had been poorly prepared to fight the war in the Far East. Colonel V.B. Kohlschmidt wrote that his academic training was thoroughly inadequate for commanding mass armies equipped with rapid-firing weapons such as machine guns and other military technology. The Chief of Staff of the Army Corps, Major N.A. Lashkevich, claimed that his commander, F.E. Meinendorf, was unfamiliar with the troop regulation manual. Further, the commander of the 23rd Infantry Division, Colonel N.A. Khamin, stated that Russia had no chance in Manchuria since Kuropatkin and his assistants insisted on fighting according to the tenets of strategic thought from the turn of the 19th century. So they were fighting a Napoleonic style war against the Japanese who had Gatling guns. On a more basic level, Captain A.I. Denikin, serving under General P.K. Rennenkampf, responded to Mikhnevich's query with concerns about the dysfunctional nature of the general staff and indeed of the entire army. Whereas some officers clearly understood their duties and performed them well, others did not. Moreover, as a rule, officers cared little for the welfare of their men under their command, a situation that, along with all of the other difficulties of the campaign, compromised overall military effectiveness. To remedy this problem of poorly trained, if not incompetent, general staff officers, suggestions focused on education and training. The quartermaster of the 3rd Manchurian Army and future chief of staff of the Russian Army, M.V. Alexeyev, expressed his belief that the tactical training of the general staff was wholly insufficient because of the attempts at practical application had little pedagogical value. The Russian army still possessed a parade ground mentality despite Kuropatkin's efforts to upgrade standards. Moreover, academy instruction in strategy and tactics was still based on Napoleonic examples, a facet of Russian military education that needed to be redressed immediately. As aptly exhibited by the Japanese on the Manchurian battlefield, Colonel A.A. Nesnamov, a future professor of strategy at the Nicholas Academy, supported this view. He further claimed that the entire concept of tactical training as it presently existed at the General Staff Academy was of dubious value. In particular, as Colonel V.I. Genishta of Kuropatkin's staff would point out, the Russian army did not have an effective tactical response to trench or mobile warfare. That's a bit of a problem when you're facing trench and mobile warfare. If you're going to describe the two features of the First World War, it's mobile for a few months in 1914. It is immobile in trenches on the Western Front. for much of 1914, 15, 16, 17, and then there's some rapid mobility throughout at phases throughout 1918, and that's your lot. So if you don't understand either of those things, you really are in deep trouble. But even more important than the brief synopsis of these individual replies of the General Staff officers was Mikhnevich's overall assessment of the letters. The Academy Commandant believed that although most officers would agree that their comrades in the General Staff were conscientious and hard workers, they all suffered from the similar problem of not being certain how best to use the assets at their disposal, whether human or material. Simply put, General Staff officers were not prepared to perform the highly specialised task that peers throughout the Army considered their exclusive responsibility. Mikhnevich went on to discuss how in the preceding 20 years the Academy had suffered from a growing difference of opinion over its mission. The outcome had been a dual attempt to train both military administrators and field commanders. As a result, the Academy had failed to perform either task well, and General Staff officers were often confused about their role. Now, I think this is one of the most useful, interesting, and revealing chapters that probably has ever been written on when you kind of reflect on why it is Russia has so many calamities in the First World War. Because Russia goes to war in 1914 with a very big, very well-equipped army, a high degree of morale and a high degree of home support, and the various kind of catastrophes and blunders you can put down to incompetence, but it's not individual incompetence that matters here. It's a structural incompetence. It's a structural failing to understand the nature of the war, of modern war, and the nature of training, pedagogy, and learning, and what it is you're trying to learn, what it is you're trying to actually teach, and a failure to think clearly about what it is you want your army to be able to do. I'm going to do some more from that chapter. Not sure when, but at some point in the near future. And I think it's, again, really, really valuable. And if you're studying the First World War and the Russian Revolution, this is really, really useful. So anyway, I'm going to leave you now. Take good care, everybody, and I'll catch you on the next Explaining History podcast. All the best. Bye-bye.
From Adams Morgan to Anacostia Park, we all want safer neighborhoods. But what does real safety mean? Real safety means preventing crime before it happens. By having police work with communities to disrupt cycles of violence. By supporting families with stable housing. And providing more mental health and drug treatment. We know that adding more police and locking up more people doesn't make us safer. Real safety means investing in the things that help prevent crime. Learn more at realsafetydc.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Explaining History. This podcast is an independent production, and it's listener support that keeps these conversations going week after week. If you find value in the show and want to help cover the costs of research and production, please consider making a contribution. You can join our community on Patreon or make a one-off donation. Just follow the links in the show notes for this episode. Every bit of support is truly appreciated. Thanks again for listening.